Today we are going to discuss about the bioremediations. Now the question arises, why we should talk about the bioremediations? What are the problems which are created in the society, problems which are created in the environments, and why we have to deal with these types of the pollutants? What are the reasons that the pollutants are go on increasing day by day? Who is responsible for the addition of the pollutants in the environments? And if we want to get rid of these pollutants, there are various methods, physical methods, chemical methods, and when the problems are not solved with a physical or chemical methods, then we have to think about the biological methods. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of the biological methods? So all these aspects we are discussing in this particular topic. Now if we go to the discussion of bioremediation process, then the question arises first, the types of the pollutants which are added in the environments. So why the pollutants are added and which type of the pollutants are added in the environments? If we look to the broad background of the types of the pollutants, then pollutants are divided into main three groups depending upon the nature of the chemical nature of the pollutants. The first types of the pollutants which are organic compounds, and these organic compounds, they are biodegradable, some of them they are non-biodegradable, and when we use any food or when we produce any types of the compounds, normally the organic compounds are added into the environments. The second type of the pollutants, they are the inorganic pollutants. Out of this, specifically the heavy metals, they are creating more toxic effects into the environment. So under the heading of the inorganic pollutants, mainly we are discussing about the toxic metals or heavy metals. And apart from the anthropogenic activity, or we can say either industry or human activity, even the natural products, they are also creating pollutions in the environments. So these natural products and any human being, we don't have control on this natural product. It is due to some vegetables, oil, and all these things, they are naturally produced, and at the time of the production of these materials, they are added into the environments and they are creating the pollutions. So these three groups of the pollutions, organic compounds, inorganic compound, under the heading of inorganic compounds, heavy metals, and the natural products, these are creating. Now the question arises, now we are in a 21st century, and since last 20-25 years, throughout the world, almost all the city and each and every individual, they are quite aware of the pollution. In spite of this awareness, in spite of our awareness regarding the health, we are not able to get complete rid of the pollutants, and in the environment, wherever you will go, you will find one or the other reason for accumulating the pollution. So what are the main reason for accumulation of the pollution? We go to the history of the methods used for the degradation of pollutants, or we can say cleanup of the pollutants. Then before 50-60 years, it was believed that the dilution is the main solution of pollutions, or disposal is the main solution of pollutions. So these two particular words, either disposal as a main solution of pollution or dilution as a main solution of pollutions, due to this, what is happening, that whatever the anthropogenic activity, whatever the natural activity, and whenever the pollutants are accumulated surrounding any individual or any residence or any industry, then the owner of that industry or that particular individual is thinking about that we can dispose these pollutants and we can get rid of it. So they are throwing these pollutants away from their factory, away from their home, or away from their city. Now if you look to any corporations, when they are collecting all types of the waste material, and they can dump at one side. So this is a disposal phenomena, or we can say the concept of the disposals is created, just a transfer of the pollutant from one place to other place, the place which is not heavily human populated. And due to this, in natural ecosystems, in spite of having the less population, in spite of having less industrializations, they are having the huge amount of the pollutant accumulated. The second concept, before 20-25 years, all the industry people, they were thinking dilution is the best solution of pollutions. So in any industry, if any people from the pollution control board will go and they will check the amount of the pollutants are above the permissible limit, then they would be fine. So what they are thinking, if they are doing their process, after process whatever the types of the pollutant are produced, they can get 5 times, 10 times, 100 times more water and they can dissolve this. So due to the dissolving the pollutants into a large quantity of water, what happens that pollution concentrations get diluted. So dilution is the best solution of pollution, and ultimately what will happen that whatever the pollutant which is accumulated either in a 1 acre of area or pollutants which are accumulated in few hundred liter of the water, now it is diluted to few thousand or few million of water. So we are not cleaning the pollutants, but we are making the dilution of this. We are decreasing the concentrations, and by doing this decreasing the concentrations, we are polluting the larger area, either aquatic area, atmospheric area, or even the land. And due to this, visually it seems that the pollutants are removed, but they are not removed. Only pollutants are diluted, and due to this, the harmful effect of these pollutants are not immediately visible. It takes longer time to show the harmful effects. So that solution is also not good. Then when we talk about development, urbanizations, industrializations, and that is very essential, because if you talk about any nation, if you talk about even any continent, all would like to develop, and development is the ultimate aim of any human being or any nation. And pollutions and the development, they are the two different sides of any one particular coin. So if you want to develop, if you want to go for the industrializations, you cannot say that you will not do the pollution. And every industry, every, we can say, small village or any nation or world itself, they want to develop. And when they are going for any developments, they are producing the pollutant, and that pollutants are added. So what is the importance of this? As development is going on continuously, so the pollutants are going to be created, pollutants are going to be added in the environments. So the process of cleaning up environments is such a vital process, it is not going to be end at any time. Even after 25 years, this subject will remain live, and you have to deal with the pollutants. You have to find out the new method to deal with the pollutants. So that is the important things, that we have to find out new and new methods for pollutions. The third criteria, the improper method which is used to get rid of the pollutants. As we know that any human being, we are very intelligent, and we try to invest minimum money if we don't get the profit. And normally this particular field, wastewater treatment or bioremediations, or we can say treatment of the pollutants, they are not paying. So whatever the investment industry is doing, or whatever the investment any city or any country is doing, this is a dead investment. And due to this, everyone will think that we should do the minimum investment in the treatment of the pollutants. And due to this, they will go for the cheapest method. So first, if it is possible to get rid of the pollutants by physical method, nobody will think about the chemical methods. If it is not possible by the physical method, because physical methods are comparatively cheaper as compared to the chemical methods. If it is not possible to treat any pollutants by physical method, then people will think about the chemical methods. And if it is possible with the chemical method, irrespective of what are the secondary pollutants are produced, irrespective of whatever the chemicals which are added to get rid of these particular pollutants, people will think about the chemical methods. And if it is not possible by chemical method, then people will think about the biochemical methods or biological methods. So the bioremediations or biological method is the last preference for any industry due to specifically two reasons. One, it may be costlier as compared to the physical and chemical method, or it may take longer time as compared to physical and chemical method. But the benefit of the bioremediations or a biological methods are they are not creating secondary pollutants. Other things, they are completely removing or they are detoxifying the materials and your environment become more clean. So either it may be more costly or it may be taking more time. People should think about if physical and chemical methods are not properly dealing with the pollutant, they should go for the bioremediation or biochemical methods. So if we look to a generalized definitions, now as we have discussed about pollutants and why pollutants are accumulated in the 21st century also, and on the basis of this, if we are mainly concentrating on the biological method of the treatment of any pollutants, then bioremediations, or we can say biological method, it can be explained that any microorganisms or plant or any living creatures, either due to their direct activity or due to the metabolite produced by these living creatures, if they are converting these pollutants into a safe products, then that method is known as the biological methods. When we talk about the pollutants, we should discuss now when we can say that pollutants have polluted the ecosystem or pollutant have polluted the environments. So any material what we are adding in the environments, and due to this addition of any material in the environment, if abnormal changes take place, then that is known as the pollutions. It is not necessarily they are only the chemical pollutants. Now we know that now at present we are going to Navratri, and in Navratri if you go from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock night, then you will find a lot of sound pollutions. That is also because it's abnormal changes. Abnormal changes anything. So these types of the pollutions which is created, either it may be a pollution due to the radiation, pollution may due to the chemical, pollution due to the sound. After this Navratri, you will go to the Diwali is very near to this, then you will also find the sound pollutions due to the crackers. And when during Diwali, along with the sound pollutions, you will find lot of gases which are coming. And for this, are there any method, biological methods by which we can treat? But the best method to deal with the pollutions, as we know that in case of the medical science, the prevention is the better than cure. So if you prevent the addition of any pollutant in the environment, that is better as compared to once the pollutants are added into the environments, or it is added into the aqueous system, or it is added into terrestrial system, then to treat. Moreover, it is also better either you may going for a chemical method or a biological method or physical methods. Now, if it is possible, you should prevent the creation of pollution. If it is not possible, then you have to try to control the pollutant at a site of productions. If any industry is producing the pollutants, then before the industry will release this pollutant into the environment, you have to treat this pollutant at the site of productions. The advantages of this, now once the pollutants are produced at any particular sites and they are added or they are spreaded in the environments, the larger area you have to treat. Depending upon the type of the pollutants and where they are added. When pollutants are added in a terrestrial system, then the spread would be minimum as compared to when pollutants are added in a aquatic system. So if any pollutants, if it is added in an aquatic system, the spread, the area in which it spread within a comparatively less time as compared to that pollutant is added in a terrestrial system. And if it is added to the environment, it is very fast. Within few minutes, it will spread into a kilometer area. So depending upon where these pollutants are added, you have to take the proper methods. As far as possible, you should treat it at the site of production. If it is not possible, then you have to collect that pollutants in a possible smallest area, and then you have to treat. You have to take care of the volatile compounds or volatile pollutants, because once it is released into the atmosphere, it is very difficult to treat. Then second comes the water soluble pollutants, because when water soluble pollutants are added, Now it pollutes the water body. At the same time, when water soluble pollutants are added to the terrestrial system, it pollutes the surface of the land. At the same time, it penetrates, and when it penetrates, it will go below the ground level. It may go to the underground water, and depending upon the direction in which underground water is flowing, that pollutants which might be added at this place, it may go to a 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. There are examples that the pollutants which are added one place, now they have traveled to a 17 to 20 kilometer area. And if you take the borewell water, then you will find that pollutants are present. So these things we have to keep in mind when we are discussing about the bioremediation process. Now, to give you more idea regarding the types of pollutants, as we have said that pollutants, either it could be anthropogenic pollutants or it may be due to the natural products. Now, when we are talking about these pollutants, then it may be divided in two groups, the non-volatiles and volatiles. As we have discussed that when volatile pollutants, immediately it will add into the atmosphere and it spread within no time. There is no boundary. Even if volatile pollutants are added in one country, no, they will go to the other country also, depending upon the flow of the wind. So non-volatile pollutants, no, once again they are subdivided into two groups. One is the non-volatile soluble pollutants and non-volatile insoluble pollutants. Here we are talking about the solubility of the pollutants in terms of a water solubility. So those pollutants which are non-volatiles and which are soluble in water, if they are absorbed, because when water soluble it will go to the land, then they will absorb to the surrounding area or they will absorb to the soil particles, and it may get or it may not get breakdown, depending upon the nature of the pollutants. So the other pollutants which are not absorbed, then many of this they are biodegradable. Why? Because they are not absorbed, so it will go into the water, and pollutants are in the form of a solutions. And normally for any biological activity, most of these microorganisms or even the plants, they take soluble material as a food. So here pollutants are also used by these organisms as a substrate or food, but provided that pollutants should be in a solution form. If it is insoluble form and if it is attached to any particles, if it is present on the surface, then only the few number of organisms will attach to that solid particle and attack pollutants. But if that particle is bigger and the pollutants are encapsulated or which is hidden inside the particles, then organism cannot penetrate the surface area of the particles, and when the organism cannot reach to the pollutants, which is known as a bioavailability of a pollutant. Organisms are capable, but the pollutants are not bioavailable, and due to this pollutants are not degraded. So this is depending upon either the pollutants are absorbed or it is non-absorbed. Now here example is given when the biodegradable pollutants, it is atrazines. Now those pollutants which are not absorbed to a solid particles and that are not also biodegradable, they are known as recalcitrants. Most of the pesticides, insecticides which are produced, and we know that, as I told you in the beginning, that all the country want to develop, one of the development in terms of pesticides, insecticides and fertilizers, they are also they are adding as a pollutants because we want to get more products, more crops, and to get more crops, pesticides are used to kill the pest. So it is killing the pest, but at the same time, when the concentration of this pesticide increase, they are harmful to other microorganisms, they are harmful to human being also, and many of these pollutants, they are recalcitrants. They are not biodegradable. Their half-life, sometime it is in terms of a few tens of years, or in case of suppose in case of DDT, the half-life of this DDT is around 100 years. So it takes 100 years to reduce the concentration only 50%. After 100 years also, the 50% of the added pollutants are remain in the atmosphere or in the aquatic solutions or in terrestrial environments, and they are creating harmful effects. Now, if the pollutants are water soluble, as it is not absorbed, then it pollutes the water. And I say that once the water is polluted, now it may pollute the land also. When water will be taken by plant, then plant will also accumulate bioaccumulation of the pollutants. And if it is accumulated in the leaves of the pollutant, and if animal is using that leaf as a food or fodder, then that animal will also get that toxic compound in their body. So, as we have seen, the soluble pollutants, the second part of this, not soluble in water. So, some of the pollutants which are not soluble in water, but they are soluble in a organic solvent, or they are soluble in lipid. Here I have taken the example of a lipid soluble pollutants which are recalcitrants, as for example DDT, PCB, as they are not water solubles, but they are soluble in lipids. So they may accumulate in a food chain, because it will go from one body to other body and they will accumulate in a food chain, and that we will discuss now how either it is a bioaccumulations, biomagnifications, or it will go from one level of food to the other level of food chain. Then those who are biodegradable pollutants, where either microorganisms or plants, they can degrade these pollutants. And inert, those another subclass of a not soluble pollutants is a inert class of, they will accumulate at the site of the production or at the site of the disposals. While those who are soluble in lipids, no, they will not accumulate at that particular sites, but they will go in a body, they will go into the various tissue, then it may go to the one organism to other organisms, while those who are accumulated sites, as for example the pyrene is a example of a inert pollutants which will not solubilize in lipids and which accumulated at the site of the productions. Now, first we have discussed non-volatiles. Now we are discussing about the volatile pollutants. As we know the meaning of the volatile, which get evaporated. And when it evaporation takes place, it will mix into the surrounding atmosphere. Out of this volatile pollutants, which are classified into subgroups, non-reactive pollutants and reactive pollutants. So non-reactive pollutants means they are not reacting with the chemical compounds. They are not reacting even with the biological compounds. And as they are non-reactive, no, they are not degradable. And when they are not degradable, they go on accumulating in the atmosphere. The example is CFC. And ultimately it leads to a global problems. Other group of these volatile pollutants which are reactive. When we can say that they are reactive, there are one or the other organisms or the living creatures which can degrade them. And this type of the pollutants can be degraded by the use of microorganisms, provided either that organisms are adjusted or accommodated, or they are adapted to this type of the compounds, or these organisms, they will develop tolerance or resistance to these types of the pollutant compounds. Now, after using some classification and subclass of the type of the pollutants, now there are various terminology, because in NET exam they will ask certain terminology and they will give you the very similar answers, which is confusing. So here, before we go for a bioremediation methods, or before we discuss the mechanisms, now let us see some of the common terminology which is used regarding the process of bioremediations, regarding the types of the pollutant which is added into the atmosphere. The first term, it is mineralizations. Now there are various terms, because when we discuss about the bioremediations, either it could be the biosorptions, it could be biodegradations, it could be bioabsorptions, it could be bioaccumulations, it could be biotransformations, it could be biodegradations. So all these terms, now they have the different meaning. And when we talk about that the pollutants is biodegradable, at what level they are biodegradable. So first terminology here which is given is mineralization of pollutants. So mineralization means there are any living creatures which can degrade the pollutants. But when we use the word that this particular substance is mineralized, it means due to this activity, biological activity or any other activity, when the pollutants or chemical compounds, they are converted to carbon dioxide, water and some other inorganic compounds. Then that chemical is classified as a mineralized chemical, and the process is known as mineralizations. But it is not always possible by the chemical method, or it is not always possible by biological method, that all the pollutants, they would be converted to carbon dioxide, water or some of the other gases or inorganic compounds. But the degradation would be half, or degradation may be partial. So this type of the compound, they are known as a partial degradation process, or which give the intermediates, which is not either carbon dioxide or water, but some of the slightly more complex compounds are there. And this compound, which is produced due to the activity, it may or may not be toxic. Once it is mineralized, then we can say definitely they are non-toxic. But when the partial degradation is there, then we cannot say that whatever the intermediate product produced, they are non-toxic. Sometimes they may be toxic, less toxic or non-toxic. So when you are going for an intermediate or the partial degradations, you have to check that whatever the product produce, either they are toxic, then that is not the real method or correct method of a bioremediation. Then persistent chemical compounds. As we have seen that some of the chemical compounds, they would be degraded in the form of carbon dioxides and water. Some of the chemical compounds, they will be degraded into a intermediate compound. Some less complex compounds are produced. Then third group of the chemicals, which is known as a persistent chemical, which undergo degradations but not under all the circumstances. They would be degraded only under certain specified conditions or under certain specific organisms. That is why the life of these compounds are long as compared to partial degradations, as compared to mineralized compounds. So once this type of the persistent chemical compounds are added in the environments, they persist for few days, few weeks or sometimes few years, because a specific condition is created, then they would be degraded. So this type of the compounds are known as a persistent compounds. The third one, the next one is recalcitrant compound. As we said that some compound easily converted into a carbon dioxide and water, some may be intermediate products, some will take long time. But some of the compounds, whatever the method you use, neither by physical method, nor by chemical methods or even the biological methods, they are not degraded. And this type of the compounds are known as a recalcitrant compounds. Now, either compounds are recalcitrants, it may be partial degradable or it may be completely degradable. And I have also given some other terminology, detoxifications. So when you take the example of a biotransformations, here we have to differentiate between a biodegradation and biotransformation. In case of biodegradations, it is chemical compositions will be more simpler at the end of the process, or we can say more complex compounds becomes less complex or simpler due to the degradation, that is known as the degradations. While in case of biotransformations, it is not necessary that the starting compound will be less complex or it would be less, we can say, complicated or smaller in size. It could be on either sides. Biotransformations will go to a degradation of process, or we can say formation of a more complex process. If formation of more complex process or degraded product, if they are non-toxic or less toxic, then we can say that is useful. As for example, in case of a certain metal ions, most of the metal ions, or we can say almost all the metals, you cannot degrade them. Once the metal is added into any environments, they will be remaining in that environment for many years. Only you have to transfer them. As for example, suppose we can take the example of arsenic, or you can take the example of chromium. So one form of a arsenic or one form of a chromium, we can say that chromium 6 and chromium 3. Similar way, arsenic 3 and arsenic 5. So arsenic 3 and arsenic 5, no, one is less toxic, one is more toxic. So chromium 6 is more toxic, and if you convert them to chromium 3, it becomes less toxic. Similarly, arsenic 3 is more toxic. If you convert it to arsenic 5, it is less toxic. And toxicity, so there are organisms, there are biological methods which is known as biotransformations. So arsenic 3 is converted to arsenic 5 or chromium 6 is converted to chromium 3, and the toxicity is reduced nearly to 100-fold. So that process is known as detoxifications. Now, as we have seen that sometime the chemical compounds, when microorganisms are attacking on these chemical compounds, it get accumulated in the biomass. So then the terminology comes bioaccumulations. So biotransformation, bioaccumulations, biodegradations, biomagnifications, bioconcentrations. Now these are once again a very related term with each other, with a very, we can say, sharp difference, minor difference between two terms. In case of bioaccumulation, what happens? Any toxic compounds, now when it is added into the environments, and either in a plant or animal or any other fish or even in microorganisms, when the concentration of added pollutants is more than the concentration of that pollutant in a surrounding atmosphere or surrounding environment, then it is known as a bioaccumulations. So suppose if I go to any river or if I go to any lake or if I take the sample of a soil and the concentration of pollutants in that aquatic system or terrestrial system is X microgram, and if I take a plant which is growing in the soil or fish or we can say some of the aquatic or animal which are living in that pond, and if I take that animal and 1 gram of the tissue of that animal and 1 gram of the water or 1 gram of the soil, and if I compare the concentration of a pollutant, if the pollutant is more even that living creature or tissue of the living creature or body of the living, then it is known as bioaccumulations. So it is a from surrounding system, either plant or animal or an organism have either absorbed or adsorbed or accumulated, and due to this concentration of these pollutants has increased in that particular animal. So this process is known as bioaccumulation. The second one is biomagnifications. Very related to this. But what happens in case of a bioaccumulations? It is from an environment to a particular plant or animal or we can say microorganisms. In biomagnifications, what happens that smaller organisms or smaller animal, they will take this material from the atmosphere and it is bioaccumulated. And now these organisms or small plants or small animal which is consumed by a higher plant or higher animal, and due to this the toxic compounds which were present or which was present in a atmosphere or environment which has come to a first step of a food chain, that is a smaller organism, smaller grass, and then with that grass or the animal organisms are used by higher animal or we can say the microorganism which is used by amoeba and all these things, then concentration of these pollutants are going many fold higher. So as compared to the atmosphere or environment, the concentration is increasing into the first level of a food chain. When you go to the second level of food chain, that concentration is increasing, and that is known as a biomagnifications. So it is magnified. Suppose it will go nanogram into the atmosphere, will go to the microgram to the first level, it will go to the milligram or gram per the same weight of the material. So it is biomagnified. The third terminology, which is bioconcentration factor. So when you are comparing the amount or the concentration of any pollutants in the surrounding environments and in the organisms, and if you take the ratio, the concentration of that particular pollutant in any living creatures divided by concentration of that pollutants in the atmosphere or environments, and this ratio indicates the bioconcentration factor. If this factor is more than 1, then we have to think twice, because the pollutants are creating more problems. If the ratio is less than 1, then they may not be as harmful as when the ratio is more than 1. And when the ratio is more than 1, then normally it may be accumulating. When the ratio will be less, that pollutants might be taken by organisms or plants or animal, but then that pollutants are degraded inside the body due to the various enzymes, due to any metabolic activity. If that pollutants are degraded, then the ratio will not go higher. But when that pollutants are not degraded, it will get concentrated in some part, either in some organ or some tissue, and that's why the concentration, bioconcentration factor will be more than 1. And when it go on increasing at any time, it will go above the permissible limit, and it will result into the death of the particular organisms. We are continuing this detoxifications. So when detoxification will take place, as we know that how they will ask questions. Do the biodegradation is a safe method of dealing with the pollutions? Then it is a question mark, because it is not necessary that the biodegradation process result into detoxification of a compound. Biotransformation process may not also always lead to the detoxifications. As I gave you the example, a positive example I gave you, that arsenic 3 to arsenic 5, it's a process of detoxification, or we can say reduced toxicity. But reverse is also true. The chromium 6 to chromium 3, a similar way, when chromium 3 to chromium 6, it is more toxic, more carcinogenic. As for example, any azo dye. So there are many biological processes for the azo dye degradations. So azo dye is degraded. When the anaerobic process is used for the degradation of azo dye, then at the end of the products you will get amines. So azo dye is toxic, which may create disturbance in your body, or it may be affecting some part, but the amines which is produced as a process of a biodegradation of a azo dye, they are carcinogen. So here, from a smaller toxicity or a less toxicity due to the biological process or due to any chemical process, the product is formed which is degraded products. So it is less complex, but it is more toxic. So this type of the process cannot be used as a process of a clean up of the environments. Here also, if you go for anaerobic process to aerobic process, once again, means because this azo dye, whatever the bacteria which are used for the degradation of this azo dye, the azo reductase enzyme which is used for degradations, this enzyme is very sensitive to the presence of oxygens. This enzyme works better in the absence of oxygens. So that is why for the degradation process of the azo dyes, you have to use first anaerobic process, and there you will get intermediate products. In one of the slides we have discussed, mineralization, then the partial degradation, intermediate product. So here intermediate product is more toxic. So then you have to go for a sequential process. Anaerobic process first we have used, and we got the degradation of the dye. So we got the amines, which is more toxic, which is mainly the carcinogens. So you have to go for a sequential second step, which is aerobic. So you should have the combination of two types of organisms. One which will be doing the first process anaerobically, and it is degrading the azo dyes to the amines, and then aerobic process, or even the same group of organisms. If you provide the air, then amines would be degraded into the nitrogen and other compounds, almost mineralization, and then completely that process is non-toxic. So this here, the first terminology what I want to explain is detoxifications. So detoxification is a process where you are using either chemical process or biological process where toxicity of the compounds is reduced. Either it will be oxidized, it could be reduced, it could be breakdown, it would be more complex, whatever it may be. Here we are concerned about the toxicity of the products, or we can say the toxic nature of the product. If the toxicity of the product is decreased, either it could be due to the degradations, mineralizations, or it could be biotransformation, then this process is known as a detoxifications. Then opposite to this detoxifications, now the second terminology which is used, it is activations. So there are certain living creatures, certain microorganisms, now which are converting this less toxic compound to a more toxic compound. There are certain chemical reactions, now as for example mercury. But mercury is toxic. But if the methyl mercurate is produced due to the transformations, then it is much more toxic as compared to mercury. So this type of the process, where any chemical process or biological process, even physical process, which is converting that pollutants into a second form, and if the second form is more toxic, then that type of the process is known as activations, activation of a toxicity. It could be anything. Then co-metabolisms. As we have discussed this, either it is mineralization or the bioaccumulations or activations everywhere. Now, when we talk about the bioremediation process, there is an involvement of a biological things. So, metabolisms. Metabolism, that you are well aware, we are not discussing more about the metabolism, but what do you mean by the co-metabolism? Metabolism means that particular substrate or pollutants which is directly attacked by living creatures by their metabolic activity, then it is known as metabolism. And why every living creatures, they will go for metabolism? Because they want to survive. They want to do growth. So for the increase in the growth, for their metabolic activity, that maintenance activity, they are degrading the compound. So any compound which provide the carbon as well as energy for the living beings, that compound is known as metabolized. Then here the terms come co-metabolism. So what is difference between the metabolism and co-meta? Co-metabolism is a process now where the pollutants are not providing carbon source or it is not providing energy. Then why should the microorganism can degrade them? Because see, all living creatures know they are doing the metabolic activity because they will get some benefits. But in case of co-metabolism process, organisms are degrading the process, substance, but without getting any benefits. Their neighbor may get a benefit. These organisms, they are doing without any selfishness, they degrade. So co-metabolism is a process where the compound, or we can say substrate or pollutants, which is not providing energy and the carbon to that microorganisms, because from carbon all other cellular parts would be produced. So this process is known as a co-metabolism. Then the second metabolism, which is the another terminology, gaseous metabolism, which is slightly different from a co-metabolism. Here it is not necessarily that they will not provide the carbon or energy source, but the enzyme which is normally used, that enzyme will do some other activity other than their normal activity. That's why this process, that metabolic activity, is known as a gaseous or a, we can say, wrong type of the metabolisms. So detoxification, activation, co-metabolism and gaseous metabolisms. Now bioaugmentations. We have discussed with some of the terminology how these organisms are degrading. Then we want to get help of the either plants or microorganisms. Then we are coming to a process, because even if you don't do anything, if you add any pollutants, I am talking about the natural pollutants. I am not talking about the anthropogenic compounds. Any natural products, if it is released to the environment, nature has made all the types of arrangement that products will degrade it. But why we have to discuss about the bioremediations? Because the process of the degradations is slow and it will take few days, few months or few years. And as if you are not talking about the increase in a populations or increase in a industrializations, then there is a balance. Normally if you go to a not urban area, rural area where there is no much industrialization, there is no crowding of the human being, then you will find less amount of the accumulation of pollutants. Because whatever the natural organism is present, whatever the indigenous organism is present, either in an aquatic system or in the atmosphere or in a terrestrial system, they are having capability to deal with all the natural pollutant produce. Only when these natural pollutants are produced in a larger quantity, or if it is an anthropogenic compound where mainly the microorganisms, those who are present in this atmosphere, if they are not acquainted with that compound, that's why they will take longer time. If we look to the development of the organisms, they are the first living creature on the planet Earth, and as it is on the basis of a scientific data, they have the lifespan and they were developed on a planet Earth as early as 3.6 to 3.8 billion years. So during the span of this 3.6 to 3.8 billion years, they have come across various type of the natural products. Either it may be a toxic compounds, it may be a pollutants, or whatever it may be. And whatever the product produced before 100 years, even it may be anthropogenic compounds, they have come across these compounds and they have developed their metabolic activity either for transformation or a degradations or mineralizations or anything, and they have developed that enzymes, that pathways. So this type of the compounds are degraded. But whatever the compound which is produced, suppose if we talk about 21st century, so if you produce any anthropogenic compound now, then organisms are not come across this type of the compound, and that's why they have not developed themselves. So due to this, they will take time for this degradations, or that is known as adaptation time. So as this process is slower, that's why we are using this terminology bioaugmentations. If some chemical compounds or any material is added into the terrestrial or aquatic or atmosphere and you want to degrade it faster, then what are the different ways? As we know that bioremediation process, it is best done by the wild type of organisms or natural organisms. But many times these natural organisms may not be present. So we have to enhance the process of biodegradation. So this process is enhanced by addition of foreign organisms. This foreign to that particular site. It is not necessarily that the organisms are developed in the laboratory. It could be developed in a laboratory. It could be brought from one particular environment and added to the environment where the pollutants are added. So that bioaugmentation is a process where you are increasing the number of organisms, bringing it either from the lab or bringing it from the natural ecosystem, and you are adding. As it is natural that initially the number of organisms which are present in that particular ecosystem, maybe we can say suppose they are 100. Now you are added 10,000. So you are not doing anything. It is only as you have added 10,000 new organisms. So initially 100 organisms were there. So what is happening? That process is becoming 100 to 1,000 times faster. So that is known as bioaugmentation. But what are the limitations of bioaugmentations? Bioaugmentations work very nicely in the laboratory, or we can say under the control conditions. But when we want to discuss with any environmental or pollution treatment or pollutant degradations, normally you have to deal with in the environments. It is not in a closed system. That we will discuss later on, that what are the methods. But normally most of the bioremediation methods, they are in the atmosphere, they are in a land, or they are in a water. So in an open system. So when you have to deal with the process in open system, and you are bringing a foreign organisms, they have to compete with a natural flora or the indigenous organism which are present. And these indigenous organisms, they are accustomed with the surrounding, not necessarily only with the pollutants. What you have done, you have developed this specific organisms which are very powerful as far as the degradation of that pollutant is concerned. But as they are not exposed to a surrounding environments, some of the other compounds, they may be toxic. And due to this toxicity of the other compound other than the pollutants, their activity will be slowed down. The second thing, when you are dealing with this organism only in laboratory or in a closed system, the other organism may not be present. While when you are adding these organisms into the open system, they have to compete with the natural organisms which are present there. And due to these competitions, many of the added organisms will be killed. And due to this, bioaugmentation process require thorough checking. It's not only that genetically modified organism, it is not only the adapted organism, it is not only the developed organism, but how you can develop that organisms not only against the pollutants, but against the complete environmental system. And if it is done, then and that organism will survive for a longer period of time. So instead of the bioaugmentations, the second terminology, biostimulations. So what is difference between bioaugmentation and biostimulation? In both the terminology, we are increasing the rate of the degradation of the process. In first case, in bioaugmentations, I am increasing the number of the cells. In case of biostimulations, normally what we are doing, we are adding the nutrients, or we are making the conditions more conducive, more optimum for the biodegradation process. Suppose, as for example, whatever the pollutants we have added, now they would be better degraded in a aerobic conditions, and that compound is 1 or 2 feet below the surface of the soil. Then the conditions below 1 or 2 feet would be anaerobic conditions, or it is not having the required amount of the oxygen. So if you supply oxygen or air, or if you supply H2O2 which also provide oxygen, then the aerobic organism will degrade. And reverse is also true. If some of the compounds, they require anaerobic conditions for the degradations, and if that compounds are present on the surface of the soil, surface of the land, where the condition is aerobic, so anaerobic organism cannot survive. So you have to cover them. As for example, some organisms, some pollutants, or normally most of the organisms, they prefer the neutral pH. They prefer atmospheric temperatures around 30, 35. They prefer around 6 to 8 pH. Suppose your compound is not degradable because it is having below pH 5 or it's above pH 8. Organisms are there, but organisms responsible for the degradation of these chemical compounds are there. But as these pollutants are creating surrounding atmosphere which is suboptimum for the activity of the organisms, due to this, organism cannot attack. And due to this, now you report that this compound is non-biodegradable. So this biostimulations, as I gave you the first example, that you have to provide the nutrients. If the nutrients are not there, then the compound is not providing. If it is only the co-metabolized, then you have to provide some nutrients. If it is condition is suboptimum, you have to provide the proper conditions. Now the third thing will happen, that the pollutants may not be bioavailable. As we have discussed now, that some of the chemical compounds, they absorb and they absorb inside, adsorb and absorb. So due to this, it creates a surrounding layer. As for example, now if you go to any metal ions, then they are present inside the rock. So now organisms are there which can biotransform that metal ions or that compound. But surrounding that particular pollutants, 1 inch, 2 inch or few inches layer is there. So organism cannot penetrate, or even if the organism want to penetrate, it will take long time. So you have to make that pollutants bioavailable. So bioavailability of the pollutant is made either if the compounds are not soluble, then you have to make some arrangement to adjust pH, temperature and something you have to make soluble. If the compounds are not present on the surface, then you have to remove the surface area. If it is very much insides, then you cannot completely remove surface area. Then you have to crack that. So once you crack, water will go inside. Along with water, organism will also go inside. So that will give you the bioavailability of the pollutants. So bioavailability of the pollutants addition of the nutrients, adjustment of the optimum conditions will stimulate, and that stimulation will increase the degradation process. Now this will give you some idea regarding the bioremediation process. As I told you, that wastewater treatment or bioremediation process or chemical process, any wastewater treatment, that is the last priority for any industry, because this process is not providing them any benefits, any monetary gain. So due to this, moreover, when we talk about the pollutants, always it is in a larger area. It is not like a fermentation industry where you can have a few hundred liter of the medium and you can get your product. Whenever the pollutants are produced, it is produced in terms of a few hundred liters or few thousand liters, or wherever the land is polluted, it is polluted in terms of a few acres. So it is not remaining to a smaller area. So mainly the process of any wastewater treatment, process of any bioremediation process is to into the atmosphere in an environment and larger area. So under these conditions, if it is process is in situ process or at site process, in situ or at site process, then they are more cheaper. The other one is the ex situ process, or it may be a process in the laboratory. So mainly we divide the bioremediation process on site and in the laboratory. If it is not possible on site, then and then you have to go to the laboratory. Why? Because as this process, any of this wastewater treatment process should be cheaper. If you are bringing that material from one site to laboratory, the transportation cost. After treatment, once again you have to replace it from where you have brought this material. So twice the transportation cost will go. That will increase the treatment cost. That's why it is the last choice. So the best choice is at site. And at site also, either it is in situ, depending upon the types of the pollutants, because it's not necessary that always you will get pollutants on the surface of a land. As for example, when we have a groundwater pollutions, then you will get the polluted water which may be few meter or few tens of meter below the land. At that time, if you remove that all water and if you treat at site, then what about the removal of water? That will cost more. So in situ, that where it is. So for that also we have to develop the process. Now you have to inject your microorganisms along with water. So it will go to whatever the polluted sites. If it is not having proper food, then you have to deal with any organisms, any living cells. It requires carbon, nitrogen and phosphorus. These are the three main components. So before dealing with any wastewater treatment, it is a thumb rule that you have to do carbon, nitrogen and phosphorus analysis. And you should know now what should be the concentration of this. So if carbon concentration is less than which is required as compared to nitrogen, then you have to add additional carbon. If you are mainly dealing with, suppose as for example in case of many industrial waste, it is having 80-90% carbon source. In that conditions, nitrogen is not enough. So organisms require to do the metabolism. They want to develop one cell to others, so they require proportion of a nitrogen. So in that condition, mainly in a wastewater treatment, they add urea or ammonia. Whatever the fertilizer we are adding, it is a nitrogen source which is added. And due to the carbon, nitrogen and phosphorus is in a proper proportions, now it is nearly 100 gem, 16 gem, 1 or depending upon this group, then in that proportion, then organism will work. So in situ, if it is the aerobic process you want to do, then you have to purge the air. But then why we are always not preferring in situ process? In situ process, the control in the scientist is very less. You don't know whatever organism you have added, either they will reach properly to the conditions. It depends upon water movement or water flowing underground. So before that, it's require the help of the geologist. In situ process, you have to require the proper help of geology. He will find out, or they will find out now in which particular direction water is flowing. Then in opposite direction you have to add. If water is flowing here, and if you add here, then it will go away from your pollutants. So here if you add your organism, it will go and mix it. Directly you cannot purge them. Then you have to find out. As for example, in case of secondary MUR, microbial enhanced oil recovery, you have to plug certain, so that your added organism or added chemical nutrient will not go to the wrong sides, or it will not mix to the below this water table where the pollutions take place. So all these things you have to take place, and there are many microorganisms which are doing all this activity. We cannot discuss all these things, but some of the microorganisms, they are producing saccharides or exopolymers. Due to this, it block the certain points where you don't want to waste your material, and due to this, the certain organisms, they produce this, and due to this they will increase the moment of the oil, because now it becomes slightly more dense. Here now various process which is discussed in terms of a biopiling, then land farming, bioreactor based, composting, in situ, either it is engineered process or engineered organism we are using, or we are doing for a bioventing or biospurging. Now this is just for understanding the classification is given, but whatever process we are using in situ, the similar process may be also used ex situ. And what are the processes which are used ex situ, they can be used in situ. Many of this process, they are superimposed with each other. They are common. Now, when we want to discuss what happens in a biopiling, the microorganisms, now if suppose some pollutants are there, and if the pollutants are having a volatile toxic compounds, so if you make a layer of the soil, or if you make a layer of a spongy material in which whatever the organisms, biodegrading organisms, they are spreaded. So the compound which is volatile, so that volatile pollutants will go up, and it will pass through the bed you have prepared, and that bed is having some moistures and organisms. So when the volatile pollutant, when it passes through this, microorganism will attack, and whatever comes out would be a non-toxic compound. Then biofarming. Suppose when the compounds are in a adsorbed form, or it is added in the land, and if you want to do the biofarming, farming means you have to remix the soil. So some organisms are aerobic, some are anaerobic. So when you are remixing, the pollutants which are added present at the bottom will come on the top. So at the bottom they will be degraded only in the anaerobic form. When they will come on the top, only the aerobic form of organism will attack, and that will enhance the process. Biostimulation will take place. So this bioreactor based. So when you have to go for bioreactor based types of a bioremediation process. So when pollutants are added in a larger area, when pollutants are very much below the surface of a land, you cannot think about the bioreactors, because then you have to create a bioreactor would be as big as this hall. So whenever the concentration, whenever the amount of the pollutant is small, amount of the pollutants, or the nature of the pollutants are very toxic, and there are chances that pollutants are degraded at site, and whatever the seepage will take place will contaminate the surrounding area. The site of pollutants are near to your laboratory. That pollutants, when it is converted into the compounds, biodegradable compounds, and that will give the additional value. So if it is economically feasible, if they are very toxic, and if there is no other alternative to deal with this type of pollutants, so bioreactor based bioremediation is the, we can say, last choice of treatment of any type of pollutants. Reason is, it may be faster, more control on the scientist, whatever the product you will get, that may be giving some economic benefits, but this process cannot deal with a larger amount, then composting is a very good method where you will get even the fertilizer out of this, where you can use the benefit of a mixed culture, aerobic, anaerobic, bacteria, fungi, even the protozoa, and the material will get composed and you will get biofertilizer produced from this. Now, one of the example I will give you, cleanup of oil spill. Now, I will not go into the data, but from where this bioremediation process or this terminology has started and it has come into a more scientific way. The Anand Chakravarti, the Indian, he has produced or he has developed a superbug due for the cleanup of an oil spill. Wherever the oil spill will take place, normally oil is transported to a very big ship. It is in terms of 1 million liters or gallon of a oil will be transported from one place to other place. And during these transportations, any leakage or anything will take place. Then it is not 1 ml, 2 ml, 100 ml, but it is in terms of 1 million liters of oil will be spilled into the ocean. And if you will not take care of this oil, and this oil is biodegradable, and if you will not take care of this, many of these compounds, they are toxic, and due to this, it will spoil the ocean water. It will lead to the death of a aquatic animal. And here now, if you take the example of Bitex, which is a very small example of some of these hydrocarbons. Process was developed from this benzene, toluene, ethane benzene, and xylene. So Pseudomonas putida and other group of these Pseudomonas burkholderia species, the different organisms, they have the different plasmids. The one organism may have the plasmid for benzene, other organism may have the plasmid for toluene. So neither of this, and the third organism may be having the plasmid for xylene. So none of them can degrade the Bitex complex. But if you transfer this plasmid from one organism to other organism and then this two plasmid to one organism, then the organism will be having all the three plasmids. That is known as a superbug. And this type of the compound, this type of organisms are developed. But when you are developing this type of organisms, the main hurdles, you cannot release this organism directly to the atmosphere or directly to the environments. You have to take permissions. So lot of we can say hurdles will come from the government, Water Pollution Board, Biodiversity Board, and you have to take the permissions. And genetically modified organisms normally not easily permitted to use for the bioremediation process. So the best way you have to do is you have to take the indigenous organism and try to develop the consortia. Once you say it is genetically modified organism, then it makes the process very difficult. So adapted organisms or consortia can do this process and you can get rid of this treatment of the oil spill. Then you can take even any types of metal ions, as I told you, they can not be biodegradable, but they can be converted to a less toxic forms, or they can be bioabsorb. Adsorption, you cannot differentiate between adsorption and absorption. Then the terminology use sorption. That once again require nearly 1 hour to discuss because it's a various mechanisms that we will discuss next time here. What are the advantage of a bioremediation process? Particularly, it's a enlarged form of the organisms. Just it is a cartoon type of the organisms are shown here. Only we want to give the message that when you want to deal with this bioremediation process, they won't require any leave. They require 24 hours. They require 24 to 7. And they can use that pollutant as their food. And they convert this pollutants as a byproduct, which is useful to you. So this is the main thing we have to learn from this organism. And they are so adaptive. Once you add any pollutants, within no time, they develop that metabolic activity and they can degrade that compound or biotransfer that compounds. Now, just I will give you some hints regarding the bioremediation techniques, what we have discussed in situ and ex situ. Then natural attenuations. As I told you that on a previous slide, that main advantage of using microorganisms, no, they develop themselves the different adaptability, and they can as in one of my lecture in a growth, we say that there are few organisms which can produce all types of the cellular components from sunlight and carbon dioxides. This is the versatility. So in case of natural attenuations, once you want to do with a bioremediation technique, the best way you have to search for a ecosystem where this type of the pollutants are added or this type of pollutants are present. And if you collect the samples from this, you will get organisms which are having the metabolic activity to degrade this. So this is natural attenuations is the best thing. And the phytoremediations, once again that is also a very long topic, but whatever activity the microorganisms are doing, similar way plants are also doing, and that process is known as a phytoremediations. This is some applications. Phytoremediation have been used for centuries for the desalinations. Phytoremediation is also used for the bioaccumulations of a metal ions which is present in the soil. One of the examples, now days are not far that carrot may not be used as a salad or the vegetable, but carrot may be used for the biofarming of a gold, because the carrot is having very good capacity to accumulate gold, and gold is a precious metal. So if you grow the carrot to a mine site which is contaminated with the gold, and after some time if you harvest this carrot, and after harvesting if you incinerate it, burn it, then whatever the ash you will get, which is having high concentration of a gold. So it may be go into a environmental treatment or pollution treatment to a gold production industry. This end with this lectures, and next time when we will discuss particularly the metal ions, how the metal ion will be removed. Here we have discussed mainly the organic compounds which can be degraded. In the next lecture of a bioremediations, we are dealing with a metallic pollutants and which are not biodegradable. Then how you can get removal, what are the mechanism of this remediation of the metal ions. Thank you very much.